The Grand Conclave Station floated in the darkness between stars, a massive structure built by species long forgotten. Its halls had witnessed thousands of diplomatic meetings, peace treaties, and declarations of war. Today it would witness something new. Ambassador Ji-won Park walked through the curved corridors with steady steps. Her black diplomatic uniform bore the simple emblem of Earth, a blue marble against the darkness of space. Behind her, Captain Min-ho Kang kept pace, his hand never far from his sidearm. He didn't trust the Creathians. Nobody did. They're going to make threats, Min-ho said quietly. Big ones, Ji-won smiled slightly. Let them. Dr. Hyejin Lee hurried to catch up with them, her tablet clutched against her chest. The xenobiologist had been studying the Creathian Empire for 5 years. She knew their culture, their pride, their absolute certainty that they ruled the galaxy through strength alone. The Empress brought her entire court. Hyejin whispered, "Every major house, every fleet commander. This isn't just a meeting, it's a show." Good, Ji-won replied. Let them all watch. The diplomatic chamber was enormous, designed to hold representatives from 50 different species. Today it was packed. The Creathians had demanded every known civilization send delegates. They wanted witnesses. Empress Velrith sat on an elevated throne at the center of the chamber. She was massive, nearly 8 feet tall, her scaled skin gleaming purple and gold under the lights. 4 arms rested on the throne's armrests, each hand adorned with rings of conquest. Her eyes, large and golden, fixed on the human delegation as they entered. The room fell silent. Ji-won walked to the human delegation's platform without hurry. She set her briefcase down carefully and turned to face the Empress. Around the chamber, representatives from dozens of species watched nervously. They had all heard the rumors. The Creathian Empire was angry. Empress Velrith rose from her throne. The movement was deliberate, designed to intimidate. When she spoke, her voice boomed through the chamber's audio systems. Humans of Earth, she began, each word dripping with contempt. You have expanded beyond your agreed boundaries. You have claimed systems that belong to the Empire by right of conquest. You have ignored our warnings and disrespected our sovereignty. Ji-won stood quietly, her expression neutral. Beside her, Min-ho tensed but remained still. Hyejin's fingers moved across her tablet, recording everything. For 200 cycles, the Creathian Empire has maintained order in this galaxy. Velrith continued. We have brought civilization to primitive worlds. We have united 400 star systems under our banner. We have crushed all who opposed us. Other delegates shifted uncomfortably. The Thessians had lost 12 colonies to Creathian conquest. The Vordani people had been enslaved for 50 years before buying their freedom with mining rights. Everyone in the chamber knew the Empire's history of brutal expansion. You are a young species, Velrith said, her 4 hands gesturing dismissively. You have existed in space for barely 200 of your years. You do not understand power. You do not comprehend the natural order of the galaxy. She paused, letting her words echo through the chamber. Therefore, we have summoned you here to deliver judgment. The Creathian Empire hereby declares war upon humanity. You have one of your weeks to evacuate your settlements in disputed territories and return to your home system. After that period, our fleets will cleanse these systems of your presence. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Several smaller species delegates immediately began whispering to their aides. War with the Creathian Empire meant destruction. Everyone knew this. The Empire had never lost a war. You will surrender, Velrith continued, her voice rising. You will accept our terms. You will acknowledge Creathian supremacy. Or you will be destroyed like all the others who defied us. The Empress sat back down on her throne, her 4 arms folding across her chest. Around the chamber, her generals and nobles stood proud, confident in their empire's might. They had conquered civilizations far older than humanity. These young upstarts from Earth would learn their place. Ji-won remained silent for a long moment. The chamber waited. Some species delegates looked at her with pity, others with curiosity. What would the humans say? Would they beg for mercy? Would they try to negotiate? Then Ji-won started laughing. It wasn't loud or mocking. It was quiet, genuine laughter, the kind that comes from hearing something unexpectedly amusing. She covered her mouth with one hand, trying to compose herself, but the laughter continued for several seconds. The chamber erupted in confused murmurs. Empress Velrith leaned forward on her throne, her golden eyes narrowing. Her generals looked at each other uncertainly. No one had ever laughed at an imperial declaration of war before. You find this amusing? Velrith's voice was cold, dangerous. Ji-won took a deep breath, getting her laughter under control. I apologize, Empress. That was unprofessional of me. She bent down and opened her briefcase. From inside, she pulled out a thin sheet of physical paper, something rarely seen in an age of holographic displays and digital communication. It was a newspaper, old-fashioned and printed on real material. Ji-won walked forward calmly. The Krethian guards tensed, but she ignored them. She climbed the steps to Velrith's throne and placed the newspaper on the armrest beside the Empress. Then she stepped back without a word. Velrith stared at the paper like it was a piece of garbage left on her throne. Slowly, she picked it up with two of her hands, her other hands remaining folded. The newspaper's masthead read, "The Seoul Daily Chronicle," in clear letters. The date was printed below it. 3 weeks old. Velrith's eyes moved to the headline. Her golden eyes widened slightly. Around her, the closest generals leaned in to see what had caught their Empress's attention. The headline was printed in large, bold letters across the top of the front page. Krethian battle fleet vanishes near Proxima. All 847 warships missing. Below the headline was a photograph taken from a human vessel. It showed hundreds of Krethian warships, dark and silent, floating dead in space. Not destroyed, not damaged, just dark, as if someone had switched off all their lights at once. Velrith's hands trembled slightly as she held the paper. Her generals crowded closer now, reading over her shoulders. Confused sounds came from their throats, clicks and hisses of disbelief. Ji-won returned to her platform and stood beside Minho and Hyejin. She clasped her hands in front of her and waited patiently. "What is this?" Velrith finally managed to ask, her booming voice now uncertain. "What trick is this?" "No trick, Empress," Ji-won replied calmly. "That's just news from 3 weeks ago. Your first Hammer fleet entered our territory near Proxima Centauri. We've been wondering when you'd notice they hadn't reported back." Velrith stood abruptly, the newspaper falling from her hands. "Where are my ships? Where are my warriors?" "They're safe," Ji-won said simply. "The crews are alive and healthy. We've been taking good care of them. They're just guests right now." The Empress's face twisted with rage and confusion. Around the chamber, every delegate was now leaning forward, desperate to understand what was happening. The Krethian Empire's fleet had vanished? Impossible. The Empire's military was unstoppable. "You lie!" Velrith shouted. "You could not defeat the first Hammer. 847 warships. The pride of our fleet." Ji-won's expression remained calm. "We didn't defeat them, Empress. We just turned off their lights." The chamber exploded into chaos. Delegates shouted questions. Krethian generals demanded explanations. Security personnel moved nervously, unsure if they should prepare for violence. Through it all, Ji-won stood quietly, waiting for the storm to pass. Beside her, Minho allowed himself a small smile. Hyejin's fingers flew across her tablet, documenting every moment of this historic meeting. Empress Velrith stared at the human ambassador, her mind racing. What had happened to her fleet? How could these young humans have stopped her empire's most powerful armada? And most terrifying of all, if they could do this once, what else were they capable of? For the first time in her long reign, Velrith felt something she had never experienced before. Fear. 3 weeks earlier, Admiral Taeyong Choi stood on the bridge of the HFSS Indomitable and watched 847 enemy warships appear on his displays. They emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, a wall of metal and weapons that stretched across the darkness. "They're here," Commander Yunahan announced from the tactical station. Her voice was steady despite the overwhelming numbers they faced. "First Hammer fleet confirmed. Count is accurate." Lieutenant Junho Bei gripped the edge of his console so hard his knuckles turned white. This was his first major deployment. He'd trained for years, studied every scenario, but nothing prepared you for seeing an actual invasion force. The Krethian ships were enormous, each one larger than most human vessels. Their weapons could glass planets. Their shields could withstand concentrated fire from a dozen ships, and there were 847 of them. The human fleet had 20 ships. Just 20. Lieutenant Junho couldn't understand why they weren't retreating immediately. This wasn't a battle. It was suicide. "Admiral," Yuna said quietly. "They're hailing us." Taeyong nodded. "Put it through." The view screen flickered and showed a Krethian commander in full battle armor. Fleet Marshal Drakthos was legendary, having conquered 30 systems personally. His scales were decorated with scars from 100 battles, each one a mark of pride. Humans, Drakthos growled, his translator rendering his words in flat English. I am Fleet Marshal Drakthos of the First Hammer. By order of Empress Velrith, you will surrender this system immediately. You have 1 of your hours to begin evacuation. After that time, we will cleanse Proxima Centauri of your presence. Taeyong studied the Krithian commander for a moment. Then he smiled, the expression calm and almost friendly. Hello, Marshal. I'm Admiral Taeyong Choi. Thank you for the warning, but we'll have to decline your generous offer. Drakthos' eyes narrowed. You have 20 ships. We have 847. You cannot possibly believe you can stand against us. You're absolutely right, Taeyong agreed cheerfully. We couldn't possibly defeat your fleet in open combat. Your ships are bigger, your weapons are stronger, and you have far more experience than we do. Junho glanced at Yuna in confusion. Why was the Admiral agreeing with the enemy? Was he going to surrender after all? Drakthos seemed equally confused by the response. Then you will withdraw? No, Taeyong said simply. We'll stay right here. But I do have a suggestion, Marshal. Speak. Cross the threshold into Proxima space. Come and try to take the system. I promise you it will be an experience you'll remember. The Krithian commander's face twisted with anger at the mockery. You dare to challenge the First Hammer? Your arrogance will cost you everything. Maybe, Taeyong replied. Or maybe you'll learn something new today. Either way, we're waiting right here at the boundary. Come on in whenever you're ready. The transmission cut off. Through the view screen, they could see the Krithian fleet beginning to move. 847 warships advancing in perfect formation, their weapons charging their shields at maximum power. All ships, Taeyong said calmly into the fleet channel, hold position at the boundary. Do not cross the threshold under any circumstances. Maintain formation and wait. Admiral, Junho couldn't help himself from speaking up. Sir, shouldn't we at least prepare to fire? Get into defensive positions? Taeyong turned and looked at the young lieutenant kindly. Watch carefully, Junho. You're about to see something that will change how you think about warfare forever. The Krithian fleet accelerated. They were moving fast now, clearly intending to demonstrate their power with a devastating first strike. Their ships glowed with energy, weapons primed and ready to unleash destruction. Yuna counted down quietly. Contact with threshold in 30 seconds, 25, 20. Junho's heart hammered in his chest. This was it. This was where they would either fight or die. He checked his console one more time, making sure all systems were ready. 15 seconds, Yuna continued. 10-5, contact. The first Krithian ships crossed the invisible boundary into Proxima Centauri space. For exactly 3 seconds, nothing happened. The massive warships continued forward, their formation perfect, their weapons glowing with deadly intent. Then every single ship went dark. Not destroyed, not damaged, just dark. 847 warships, representing the greatest military force the Krithian Empire had ever assembled, simply stopped working all at once. Their lights went out. Their engines died. Their weapons powered down. Their shields vanished like soap bubbles. The ships drifted forward on momentum alone, dark and silent, like enormous tombstones floating through space. Junho stared at his display in complete shock. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. Around the bridge, other officers sat frozen, watching the impossible scene before them. What? Junho finally managed to whisper. What just happened? Yuna smiled grimly. The silence field, they're inside it now? The what? Taeyong walked to the center of the bridge, his hands clasped behind his back. Every ship that crossed the threshold entered our defensive field. It disrupts electromagnetic systems. All of them, simultaneously. But they're not destroyed? Hunyo asked, still trying to process what he was seeing. No, Taeyong confirmed. The crews are alive. Life support is still functioning on emergency power. But everything else? Propulsion, weapons, communication, shields, all dead. They're helpless. On the view screen, the Krithian fleet continued drifting. Some ships were trying to fire maneuvering thrusters, but even those systems were offline. They were trapped inside dead machines, unable to fight, unable to flee, unable to even call for help. How long? Hunyo asked quietly. How long what? How long until they can fix it? Restart their systems? Yuna answered this time, her voice matter of fact. They can't. Not while they're inside the field. The silence field doesn't just turn things off. It actively prevents any electromagnetic system from functioning. As long as they're in Proxima space, they're dead in the water. Taeyong nodded. Which means they're now our responsibility. Yuna, start organizing rescue operations. We need to get life support units to those ships, provide medical assistance, and ensure the crews don't panic and hurt themselves. You're going to help them? Hunyo couldn't hide his surprise. But they came here to conquer us. The Admiral looked at the young lieutenant with patient eyes. Yes, and they failed. Now they're helpless people floating in dead ships, running out of air and probably terrified. We're not monsters, Junho. We defended ourselves, but we're not going to let them die. Yuna was already working her console, dispatching medical ships and supply vessels, rescue operations commencing. It'll take about 6 hours to reach all 847 ships. Make it 5, Taeyong said. I don't want anyone suffocating because we were too slow. Through the view screen, they watched the dead Crethean fleet drift silently. Junho tried to imagine what the crews inside were experiencing. One moment they were an unstoppable invasion force. The next they were prisoners in their own ships, everything dark, everything broken, completely helpless. Sir, Junho said slowly, thinking through the implications, if we have this technology, this silence field, why didn't we tell anyone? Why let the Crethians think they could invade? Taeyong was quiet for a moment before answering. Because talking about a defensive system makes people nervous. They start wondering if you might use it offensively. They start planning countermeasures. They start building alliances against you just in case. But now they know, Junho pointed out. Now they know it works, Taeyong corrected. They've seen it. They've experienced it. And they've seen that we didn't destroy their fleet when we easily could have. That's worth more than any diplomatic speech. Yuna looked up from her console. First rescue teams are approaching the nearest Crethean vessels. They're signaling surrender and requesting assistance. Granted, Taeyong ordered. Full medical support, food, water, everything they need. Treat them like guests who got lost, not prisoners of war. Guests? Junho asked incredulously. They tried to invade us. The Admiral smiled slightly. Yes. And now they're going to go home and tell everyone exactly what happened. How the humans could have destroyed them but chose mercy instead. How we provided medical care and support even after they threatened us. Do you know what that does, Lieutenant? Junho thought about it. It makes us look strong. And kind, exactly. Strength without cruelty. Power without abuse. That's how you win respect in the galaxy, not through conquest. Taeyong turned back to the view screen, watching the rescue operations begin. Besides, those crews didn't choose to invade. Their Empress ordered them. They're just following orders. Over the next several hours, human rescue teams moved from ship to ship throughout the dead Crethean fleet. They brought portable life support units, medical supplies, food, and water. They provided comfort to terrified crews who thought they were about to die. They answered questions as best they could without revealing classified information. Junho volunteered for one of the rescue teams. He wanted to see the Crethians up close, understand who they were beyond the military threat they represented. Inside one of the massive warships, he found the crew huddled in the dark corridors, emergency lights providing just enough illumination to see. They looked exhausted, scared, and confused. When the human rescue team arrived with supplies, several Crethean warriors actually started crying with relief. Thank you, one of them said in broken English. We thought we would die here. Junho helped distribute water and energy bars. You're safe now. We'll take care of you? Why? Another Crethean asked, genuine confusion in her voice. We came to destroy you. Why help us? Junho remembered Admiral Taeyong's words. Because you're people. That's reason enough. Back on the Indomitable, Yuna was compiling reports. All 847 ships secured. Total Crethean personnel, 112,416. All alive. Minor injuries only, mostly from panic during the shutdown. No fatalities, Taeyong nodded, satisfied. Good work, everyone. Now comes the interesting part. What's that, sir? Yuna asked. The Admiral smiled. Now we wait for the Crethean Empire to realize their fleet is missing. The secure briefing room aboard the HFSS Indomitable was designed to prevent any form of surveillance. No signals could enter or leave. The walls were lined with dampening materials that blocked every known form of electromagnetic scanning. Inside this room, humanity's deepest secrets could be discussed freely. Admiral Taeyong Choi sat at the head of the conference table. Beside him, Commander Yuna Han reviewed data on her tablet. Lieutenant Junho Bei sat near the back, still processing everything he'd witnessed over the past day. He'd been invited to this briefing as a representative of the younger generation of officers, those who would carry humanity's defense into the future. The door opened and Dr. Soman Kwan entered, followed by Director Jeho Nam. Dr. Soman was the chief scientist behind the Human Defense Initiative, a brilliant physicist who'd spent 20 years developing technologies that could level the playing field between humanity and older alien civilizations. Director Jeho was the head of strategic defense planning, the man who decided how humanity's limited resources would be spent to ensure survival. "Gentlemen, Commander," Dr. Soman greeted them as she sat down. She placed a small device on the table that projected a holographic display into the air above them. "I assume Lieutenant Bay has questions?" Junho straightened in his chair. "Yes, ma'am." "Many questions." "Good," she replied with a slight smile. "That means you're thinking, ask." "The silence field," Junho began. "How does it work? And why didn't any of us know about it before today?" Dr. Soman glanced at Admiral Taeyong, who nodded. She took a breath and began explaining. 15 years ago, we realized something important. Every advanced civilization in the galaxy uses similar fundamental technologies. They all rely on electromagnetic fields for power generation, propulsion, weapon systems, and communications. The specifics vary, but the underlying physics is universal. She manipulated the holographic display, showing diagrams of various alien ship designs, Krethian vessels, Thessian cruisers, Vordani carriers, all different in appearance but with similar internal systems. "We studied every alien technology we could access," Dr. Soman continued. "We bought salvage. We examined abandoned ships. We traded for technical specifications. And we found the common thread. All of them, every single species, built their technology on the same foundation. So we found a way to attack that foundation," Director Jeho added. "Not with weapons. With disruption," Dr. Soman nodded. "The silence field generates a specific electromagnetic pulse pattern that interferes with power systems at the quantum level. It's not an explosion. It's more like noise that drowns out everything else. Any device trying to generate or control electromagnetic fields within the silence field simply can't function." "The interference is too strong." Junho frowned, trying to understand. "But our ships work fine. How?" "Because we designed them to," Yuna answered. "Every human military vessel built in the last decade has been hardened against the silence field. We use different principles for critical systems. Mechanical backups, isolated power generation, shielded components. Our ships can function inside the field because we built them specifically to do so. The aliens never thought to protect against this," Dr. Soman explained. "Why would they? They've been building ships the same way for thousands of years. It works perfectly, until it doesn't." Admiral Taeyong leaned forward. "Lieutenant Bay, do you know what humanity's greatest advantage has always been? Throughout our entire history on Earth?" Yunho thought about it. "Adaptability?" "Close. Innovation born from necessity." Taeyong smiled. "We're not the strongest species. We're not the oldest. We don't have the biggest ships or the most advanced weapons by conventional standards, but we're very good at finding unconventional solutions to problems." Director Jeho brought up another holographic display, this one showing Earth's military history. Ancient battles, medieval sieges, modern warfare. Humans have been fighting each other for thousands of years. We've developed every form of warfare imaginable. Electronic warfare, psychological warfare, asymmetric warfare. We've learned that superior numbers and weapons don't guarantee victory. Strategy and innovation do. "The silence field is electronic warfare on a galactic scale," Dr. Soman said. "We took lessons from Earth's military history and applied them to space combat. Make the enemy's weapons irrelevant. Control the battlefield. Choose where and how the fight happens." Junho was beginning to understand. So when Admiral Taeyong invited the Krethians to cross the threshold, he was choosing the battlefield. "Exactly," Taeyong confirmed. "We couldn't fight them in open space. But in our space, inside the silence field's area of effect, they couldn't fight us either. The battlefield became one where their advantages meant nothing." "How large is the field?" Junho asked. "Just Proxima Centauri?" Dr. Somin and Director Jeho exchanged glances. The scientist took a deep breath before answering. "Currently, we have 312 silence field generators positioned throughout human-controlled space. Each one covers a sphere roughly 4 light hours in diameter. They're networked together, creating overlapping zones of protection. Junho's eyes widened. 312? How long have we been building these? Quietly for the past decade, Director Jeho replied, using automated construction in remote locations. Very few people knew the full scope of the project. The construction crews thought they were building sensor arrays. The transport teams thought they were delivering scientific equipment. Only a handful of people knew what we were really creating. A defensive net, Yuna said softly. A net that covers every human colony, every settlement, every strategic location. Any fleet that tries to invade human space will face exactly what the first hammer faced, Admiral Taeyong explained. Complete shutdown. No ability to fight, flee, or communicate. They'll be helpless until we decide what to do with them. Junho sat back in his chair, overwhelmed. This changes everything. If other species find out, they'll be terrified of us. Perhaps, Dr. Somian acknowledged. But they'll also think twice before attacking us. Fear isn't always bad if it prevents war. There's something else you need to understand, Director Jeho said, his expression serious. The silence field only works defensively. It requires massive generators that can't be moved or hidden on ships. We can't take this technology into anyone else's territory and use it against them. We can only use it to defend our own space. Why not make it portable? Hunyo asked. If we could mount these on ships, we'd be unstoppable. Dr. Soman shook her head. The power requirements are immense. Each generator needs a dedicated fusion reactor and a gravitational anchor. Making it portable would require technology we don't have yet. Maybe in another 50 years, but not now. And honestly, Admiral Taeyong added, we don't want offensive capability. That would make us conquerors. Right now, we're defenders. There's a crucial difference. Junho considered this. So we can defend ourselves perfectly, but we can't attack anyone else. Correct, Director Jeho confirmed. Which is exactly the message we want to send to the galaxy. We're not a threat to anyone who leaves us alone, but we're absolutely secure in our own territory. Yuna brought up new data on the holographic display. Since the Proxima incident, we've detected increased scanning activity from multiple alien civilizations. They're trying to figure out what we did. None of them have come close to understanding it yet. They will eventually, Dr. Soman said. Given enough time, someone will figure out the principles and develop countermeasures. But that's decades away, maybe longer. And by then we'll have developed new defenses. It's a race, Junho realized. Technology against technology. It's always been a race, Admiral Taeyong replied. The difference is we're now competitive. Before the silence field, we were vulnerable. Any major power could have conquered us if they decided to. Now, we're untouchable. Director Jeho stood and walked to the viewport, looking out at the stars. 112,000 Krithian warriors are currently our guests. They're being treated well, given medical care, proper food, comfortable accommodations. We're documenting everything. When they go home, they'll tell their empire exactly what happened. And what will they say? Chunyo asked. They'll say humanity defeated them without killing anyone, Yuna answered. They'll say we could have destroyed the entire fleet but chose mercy instead. They'll say we provided aid to enemies who came to destroy us, Dr. Soman nodded. Military strength combined with ethical behavior. That's more powerful than weapons alone. It demonstrates that we have power but choose to use it responsibly. It also demonstrates, Admiral Taeyong added, that war against humanity is pointless. You can't win, and even if you lose, we won't destroy you. That removes both the incentive to attack and the fear of total annihilation. It's a message designed to promote peace. Junho looked at each of the people in the room. These were the leaders who'd planned humanity's survival in a dangerous galaxy. They'd spent years developing not just weapons, but strategy. Not just defense, but diplomacy. What happens now? He asked quietly. Director Jeho returned to the table. Now Ambassador Ji-Wan Park delivers our message to the Krithian Empire and the rest of the galaxy. She'll explain what happened at Proxima. She'll offer to return the First Hammer Fleet and all its personnel unharmed. And she'll make it clear that any future invasion will end the same way. The Empire won't like it, Yuna observed. No, Admiral Taeyong agreed. But they'll have to accept it. They can't win a war they can't fight. Dr. Soman began packing up her equipment. Lieutenant Bay, you're going to tell other young officers what you saw today. You're going to explain how humanity survived. Make sure they understand something important. What's that, ma'am? We didn't survive by being the strongest or the most advanced. We survived by being smart, by thinking differently. By refusing to play the game by rules designed to make us lose. She smiled. That's humanity's real superpower. Not technology. Creative thinking. The briefing ended and people began filing out. Junio remained seated for a moment, processing everything he'd learned. The silence field wasn't just a weapon. It was a statement. It said humanity refused to be victims, refused to be conquerors, and refused to accept that bigger civilizations made the rules. Admiral Tai Yong paused at the door and looked back at the young lieutenant. Get some rest, Junho. Tomorrow you're returning to the Krethian ships with another supply run. I want you to talk to their crews. Learn about them. Understand them. Why, sir? Because someday those warriors might be our allies instead of our enemies. Today we showed them our strength. Tomorrow we show them our humanity. The Grand Conclave Station had never been so silent. Hundreds of delegates from dozens of species sat frozen in their seats, trying to process what they just witnessed. The mighty Krethian Empire, conqueror of 400 star systems, had just been told their most powerful fleet had vanished without a trace. Empress Velrith stood beside her throne, holding the newspaper Ambassador Jiwan Park had given her. The photograph showed her fleet, 847 warships floating dark and dead in space. The headline declared them missing. Missing. As if they were lost children rather than the Empire's greatest military force. This is impossible, Velrith said, her voice shaking with rage and confusion. You could not have defeated them. The First Hammer has conquered 30 systems. Fleet Marshal Drakthos has never lost a battle. Jiwan remained calm, her hands folded in front of her. We didn't defeat them, Empress. We simply made it impossible for them to fight. Around the chamber, delegates whispered urgently to each other. The Thessians, who'd lost colonies to Krethian conquest, leaned forward eagerly. The Vardani people exchanged excited glances. If humanity could stop the Empire's fleet, perhaps others could resist too. Delegate Corvin of the Thessian Collective stood slowly. He was old, his blue skin marked with age spots, his movements careful and deliberate. Ambassador Park, on behalf of the neutral species of this galaxy, I must ask the question everyone is thinking. What exactly happened at Proxima Centauri? Jiwan glanced at her military attaché, Ambassador Yunji Song, who stepped forward carrying a data drive. Yunji was younger than Jiwan, a former fleet commander who'd transferred to diplomatic service. She understood both military operations and political necessity. 3 weeks ago, Yunji began, her voice clear and professional. The Krethian First Hammer fleet entered human-controlled space without authorization. They transmitted demands for our immediate surrender and evacuation. She inserted the data drive into the chamber's central display system. A holographic projection appeared above the center of the room, showing the Proxima system from multiple angles. We invited them to enter Proxima Centauri space, Yunji continued. The hologram showed the human fleet of 20 ships holding position at a specific boundary. When they crossed our defensive perimeter, their ships experienced immediate systems failure. The hologram showed exactly what had happened, the massive Krethian fleet advancing confidently, then suddenly going dark, all of them, simultaneously. The effect was stunning to watch, like someone had flipped a switch and turned off 847 warships at once. No weapons were fired, Yunji emphasized. No violence occurred. The ships simply stopped functioning. Propulsion, weapons, communications, shields. Everything dependent on standard electromagnetic systems ceased operation. A Krethian general pushed through the crowd toward the throne. This is trickery, some form of illusion. No illusion, Jiwan replied calmly. If you doubt the recording, I can provide you with personal communications from your crew members. We've been allowing them to send messages home for the past 2 weeks. I'm surprised none reached you. Velrith's face darkened. My warriors would never cooperate with you. They're not cooperating, Empress. They're accepting humanitarian aid while trapped in dead ships. Jiwan pulled out a tablet and displayed several text messages. These are from your crews. Their names, identification codes, everything verifiable. They're alive, healthy, and currently residing in our temporary facilities near Proxima while we work on solutions for their situation. She handed the tablet to a Krethian guard, who carried it to Velrith. The Empress scrolled through the messages, her golden eyes widening as she recognized names, saw familiar identification protocols. These were real messages from real warriors. One message read, "The humans feed us well. They provide medical care. We are prisoners but treated with respect. We do not understand why they help us after we tried to destroy them. Another said, "Tell my family I am alive." The human doctors saved Corvus when his breathing equipment failed. They shared their medicine freely. "These are strange enemies," Delegate Corvin spoke again, his voice thoughtful. "You disabled their ships but did not destroy them. You captured their crews but did not harm them." Ambassador Park, why? "Because we don't want to be conquerors," Jiwan answered simply. "We want to be left alone to live our lives." The crews of the First Hammer were following orders. They didn't personally choose to invade us. We hold no grudge against them as individuals. A delegate from the Renathi species stood, her antenna twitching nervously. "But how did you do this? What weapon stops ships without destroying them?" "It's not a weapon," Yunji replied. "It's a defensive system. We call it the silence field. It disrupts electromagnetic systems within a specific area. Any ship entering that area loses the ability to generate or control electromagnetic fields." "Can you take this system into other territories?" someone asked from the back. "No," Jiwan stated firmly. "The silence field requires massive generators that cannot be moved. They're permanently installed in our territory. We can only use them defensively to protect our own space. We couldn't invade anyone else's territory with this technology even if we wanted to." This statement caused another wave of whispers. A defensive-only technology, powerful enough to stop any fleet but unable to be used for conquest. Several delegates exchanged meaningful looks. This changed the political calculations considerably. Empress Velrith slumped back onto her throne, the tablet falling from her hands. "You have made the Empire look weak. You have humiliated us before the entire galaxy." "No, Empress," G1 replied gently. "You humiliated yourselves by declaring war without understanding your opponent. We simply defended ourselves. There's no shame in that. What do you want?" Velrith asked tiredly. "What are your demands for the return of my fleet?" G1 walked forward again, standing at the base of the throne's steps. "We want you to withdraw your declaration of war. Publicly acknowledge that human territory is sovereign and will be respected. In return, we'll return your entire fleet, all personnel, all equipment completely unharmed. We'll even pay for repairs to any systems damaged when we towed the ships to safer locations. That's all?" Velrith seemed surprised. "No tribute? No territorial concessions? No demands that we surrender systems to you?" "That's all," Jiwan confirmed. "We never wanted this conflict, Empress. We just want peace and the freedom to develop in our own space without interference." Delegate Corvin stood again. "I wish to say something if the Empress permits." Velrith waved one hand dismissively, still processing everything. "The Thessian Collective has watched the Krithian Empire expand for 200 cycles," Corvin said slowly. "We have lost colonies. We have seen civilizations destroyed, and always the Empire claimed it was bringing order and civilization to primitive peoples." He turned to face G1. "Humanity has shown us something different. You have demonstrated power without cruelty, strength without oppression. You defeated the Empire's fleet but chose mercy. This is not the behavior of conquerors. This is the behavior of a mature civilization." Other delegates began nodding. Several species that had suffered under Krithian expansion saw a new possibility. If humanity could defend itself so absolutely, perhaps they could too. Or perhaps humanity might help them. A delegate from the Forathi Confederacy stood. "Ambassador Park, would humanity be willing to discuss mutual defense agreements with other species?" Before Jiwan could answer, another delegate spoke up. The Maravan League would also like to explore closer ties with humanity. More voices joined in. Species that had lived in fear of larger powers suddenly seeing an opportunity for protection. Empress Velrith watched this unfold with growing alarm. She'd declared war to expand the Empire's influence. Instead, she'd created a diplomatic disaster. Humanity was now the center of attention, with smaller species flocking to them for protection. "Silence," Velrith commanded, her voice booming. The chamber quieted reluctantly. "Humanity has made its point. We acknowledge your defensive capabilities. We will withdraw our declaration of war." "Thank you, Empress," Jiwan said with a small bow. "We'll begin making arrangements for the return of your fleet immediately." "But understand this," Velrith continued, leaning forward on her throne. "The Empire will not forget this day. We will study your technology. We will find countermeasures. And someday we may return." "That's your choice," G1 replied evenly. "But I would suggest a different path. Instead of seeking conflict, why not seek cooperation? Humanity has much to offer the galaxy beyond military technology, science, culture, trade. We could be valuable partners instead of enemies. The Empire does not have partners, one of Velrith's generals snarled. Only subjects and future subjects. Then perhaps, Ji-won said quietly, it's time to reconsider that policy. Because the galaxy is changing whether the Empire wants to acknowledge it or not. Yoonji stepped forward again. We're transmitting coordinates where the first Hammer fleet can be retrieved. Your crews are gathered at 3 temporary stations we've constructed. They're comfortable, healthy, and ready to go home. We've also compiled detailed medical reports on every individual to ensure proper follow-up care. She projected more data showing the locations, the current status of all personnel, and even dietary preferences the human support staff had learned while caring for the Krathians. You documented their dietary preferences? A Krathian officer asked incredulously. Of course, Yoonji replied. We wanted to make sure everyone was comfortable during their stay. Some of your warriors have specific nutritional needs. We made sure those were met. This simple statement seemed to impact the Krathian delegation more than anything else. The Empire had conquered dozens of species, but had never shown such care for captured enemies. The contrast was stark and deeply uncomfortable. Delegate Corvin approached Ji-won. Ambassador, the Thessian Collective would like to formally request a meeting to discuss mutual interests. Many of us see humanity as a potential ally in maintaining peace. We'd be happy to meet, Ji-won replied warmly. In fact, we'd welcome meetings with any species interested in peaceful cooperation. This is outrageous, the Krathian general shouted. The Empire will not be undermined by these primitives. Admiral Taeyong's voice crackled through Yoonji's communicator, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Yoonji, we're detecting a small Krathian force breaking away from the main fleet outside the station. Looks like about 40 ships. They're moving toward Proxima. The chamber fell silent again. Yoonji looked at her communicator, then at the Krathian delegation. Empress, are you sending another fleet? Velrith looked genuinely confused. No, we sent no one. The general who'd been shouting suddenly looked uncomfortable. Several other Krathian officers stepped away from him slightly. Admiral, Yoonji said into her communicator, confirm the composition of that force. Confirmed. 40 ships, mostly heavy cruisers. They're broadcasting a command code from... Taeyong paused. From General Vorthak. Everyone looked at the Krathian general near the throne. His face had gone pale, or as pale as Krathian scales could appear. Vorthak, Empress Velrith said slowly, her voice deadly cold. What have you done? General Vorthak stood frozen in the Grand Conclave chamber, suddenly the center of everyone's attention. His 4 hands clenched into fists, his golden eyes darting between Empress Velrith and the human delegation. I did what was necessary, he finally said, his voice defiant. The Empire cannot show weakness. We cannot accept humiliation from these primitives. My loyal forces will succeed where the first hammer failed. Empress Velrith rose from her throne, her massive form trembling with rage. You dare? You dare commit forces without my authorization? That is treason, Vorthak. It is loyalty, the general shouted back. Loyalty to what the Empire should be. Not this weakened diplomatic version you're creating. We are conquerors. We take what we want. Ambassador Ji-won listened to this exchange calmly, then touched her earpiece. Admiral Choi, what's the status of General Vorthak's fleet? Taeyong's voice came through clearly. They're approaching Proxima's boundary now, Ambassador. Should we let them cross? The chamber went silent. Everyone waited to hear what humanity would do. Would they disable this fleet too? Would they finally show the violent response everyone expected from a species with such power? Ji-won was quiet for a moment, considering. Then she spoke, her voice clear enough for everyone in the chamber to hear. Disable them, but carefully. I don't want any casualties. These crews are following orders even if those orders are treasonous. Understood, Taeyong replied, activating silence field in 3, 2, 1. Through the holographic displays that were still active in the chamber, everyone watched as 40 Krathian warships crossed into Proxima space and immediately went dark, just like the first Hammer fleet had weeks before. The effect was just as dramatic the second time. One moment an invasion force, the next floating metal tombs. No, Vorthak whispered, staring at the display. That's impossible. I studied the reports. I thought we could move fast enough, strike hard enough. You thought wrong. Commander Yunahan's voice came through the communicator from Proxima. General, your crews are now experiencing what the first Hammer experienced. Complete systems failure. They're helpless. We're already dispatching rescue teams. Empress Velrith moved with surprising speed for someone so large. She grabbed General Vorthak with two of her hands and lifted him off his feet. You have disgraced the Empire. You have endangered our warriors. You have proven yourself unfit for command. I was trying to restore our honor. Vorthak struggled in her grip. You were trying to start a war we cannot win. Velrith threw him down at the foot of her throne. Guards, arrest this traitor. He will face judgment when we return home. As Krethian security forces moved to restrain the general, Jiwan spoke into her communicator again. Admiral, how long until your rescue teams reach the new arrivals? 4 hours, Ambassador. We're prioritizing life support as always. Thank you. Please extend our apologies to the crews. Let them know they're victims of their general's poor judgment, not enemies of humanity. This statement rippled through the chamber. Even after a second unprovoked attack, humanity was still showing mercy, still prioritizing the lives of warriors who'd come to destroy them. Delegate Corvin stood slowly, his old bones creaking. Empress Velrith, I believe we have all witnessed something unprecedented today. Humanity has now twice defended itself without taking a single life. They have shown us power tempered with wisdom. I believe it is time for this galaxy to acknowledge a new truth. What truth? Velrith asked tiredly, slumping back onto her throne. That conquest is no longer the only path. That there are other ways to achieve security and prosperity. Corvin turned to address the entire chamber. I propose the formation of a new coalition. Not an empire built on subjugation, but an alliance built on mutual defense and cooperation. And I propose that humanity be invited to help lead this coalition. Murmurs of agreement spread through the delegates from smaller species. The Thessians, the Vordani, the Renathi, the Forathi, the Maravan. Species that had lived in fear of larger powers suddenly saw an alternative. The Thessian collective supports this proposal, Corvin continued. We believe humanity has demonstrated the qualities necessary for leadership. Strength without aggression, power without oppression. The Vordani people agree, another delegate announced, standing. We request formal alliance with humanity. More voices joined in. Within minutes, 12 different species had expressed interest in forming defensive agreements with humanity or joining any coalition humanity would support. Empress. Velrith watched this unfold with a mixture of anger and resignation. In trying to conquer humanity, she'd inadvertently created a coalition against future Krethian expansion. The Empire's power hadn't diminished, but its freedom to use that power certainly had. Ambassador Park, Velrith said heavily, it seems you have won more than a military victory today. You have changed the political structure of this galaxy. We didn't seek to change anything, Empress. Jiwan replied. We just wanted to be left alone. But if our defense of ourselves inspires others to seek their own security through cooperation, rather than conquest, we won't oppose that. Dr. Heejin Lee stepped forward. Speaking for the first time since entering the chamber, Empress, humanity studies cultures extensively. We understand the Krethian Empire values strength and honor, but there's honor in adaptation too. The greatest civilizations in Earth's history were those that could recognize when old ways needed to evolve. You lecture us on honor? A Krethian noble snarled. No, Heejin replied calmly. I'm offering perspective. The Empire is still powerful. You still control 400 systems. You still have the largest fleet in this region of space. But you now know you can't expand through conquest of protected territories. That's not weakness. That's reality. What you do with that reality determines whether the Empire thrives or stagnates. Empress Velrith considered this for a long moment. Around her, the Krethian delegation waited for her response. The entire chamber seemed to hold its breath. What do you propose? Velrith finally asked. Jiwan smiled slightly. Trade, cultural exchange, scientific cooperation. The Krethian Empire has accumulated vast knowledge over thousands of years. Humanity has new perspectives and technologies to offer. Together we could both benefit without conflict. You want to trade with us after we declared war on you? Yes, because holding grudges doesn't serve anyone's interests. You made a mistake. You're acknowledging it. That's enough for us to move forward. Over the next several hours, the Grand Conclave transformed from a declaration of war into an impromptu diplomatic conference. Species that hadn't spoken to each other in decades found common ground. Discussions of mutual defense agreements began. Trade negotiations started. Cultural exchange programs were proposed. Jiwon found herself at the center of it all, mediating disputes, suggesting compromises, helping smaller species navigate complex diplomatic waters. Captain Minho Kang stood nearby, still alert but beginning to relax as he realized violence was no longer imminent. By the end of the day, the framework for what would become known as the Terran Accords had been established. 12 species agreed to form a mutual defense coalition with humanity, providing technological support and strategic guidance. The Crethean Empire, while not joining the coalition, agreed to respect its member territories and establish formal diplomatic relations with humanity. 6 months passed. The Grand Conclave Station had become a regular meeting place for the coalition members. What started as a defensive alliance had evolved into something more, a genuine community of species working together on shared projects. Admiral Taeyong Choi stood in the station's observation deck, looking out at the stars. Beside him, Commander Yuna Han reviewed progress reports on her tablet. The third Thessian colony just activated their silence field generator, Yuna reported. We've now helped install defensive systems in 23 locations across coalition space. Good, Taeyong replied. Any trouble with the installations? None. The Thessians are quick learners. They'll be able to maintain the systems themselves within a year. A year ago, Taeyong had been preparing for possible war with the galaxy's most powerful empire. Now he was helping former strangers defend themselves. The change had been rapid and unexpected, but welcome. Admiral, Lieutenant Junho Bei's voice came through the communicator. The Crethean diplomatic vessel has arrived. Empress Velrith is requesting to meet with you and Ambassador Park. Tell her we'll be there in 10 minutes. Junho had been promoted twice in the past 6 months. His experience during the first Hammer incident had marked him as a rising leader. Now he was coordinating diplomatic security for coalition meetings. In a private conference room, Empress Velrith sat across from Jiwon and Taeyong. The Empress looked different than she had 6 months ago. Less arrogant, more thoughtful. The humiliation of Proxima had forced her to reconsider many things. Ambassador Park, Admiral Choi, Velrith greeted them formally. Thank you for meeting with me. Of course, Empress, Jiwon replied. What can we do for you? I have a proposal. The Empire has been studying humanity's approach to diplomacy and defense. We've realized that expansion through conquest is becoming increasingly difficult as more species adopt defensive technologies. We need to adapt. Go on, Taeyong encouraged. The Empire wishes to propose a joint scientific venture. We have extensive research facilities and thousands of scientists. You have innovative approaches to problem solving. Together, we could make discoveries that benefit both our peoples. Jiwon glanced at Taeyong, who nodded slightly. They discussed this possibility before. The Crethean Empire was too large and too powerful to ignore. Finding ways to integrate them into peaceful cooperation was essential for long-term stability. What kind of research are you proposing? Jiwon asked. Medical technology primarily. The Empire's conquest history means we have data on dozens of species biology. Combined with human medical advances, we could develop treatments for diseases that currently have no cure. A worthy goal, Jiwon agreed. We'd be interested in exploring this further. They talked for another hour, discussing details, establishing parameters, building trust one conversation at a time. It wasn't easy. There was still tension, still memories of conflict. But both sides were committed to finding a better path forward. That evening, Jiwon stood in the station's central plaza, watching species from across the galaxy mingling peacefully. Thessians traded stories with Vordani. Renathi children played with Merovan youngsters. A group of Crethean scientists debated theories with human researchers. Dr. Hyejin Lee joined her, carrying 2 cups of tea. It's remarkable, isn't it? 6 months ago, half these species barely acknowledged each other's existence. Fear makes people isolate, Jiwon observed. Safety allows community. Do you think it will last? Jiwon sipped her tea, considering. I think we've given them something more valuable than defensive technology. We've given them hope that cooperation works better than conquest. Whether it lasts depends on whether we can keep proving that true. Across the plaza, Lieutenant Junho Bai was speaking with a group of young officers from various species. He was telling them the story of the first Hammer fleet. The day humanity showed the galaxy that true strength wasn't about destroying enemies, but making conflict unnecessary. One young Thessian officer asked, "How did humanity become so wise? Your species is so young compared to ours." Junho smiled, remembering something Admiral Taeyong had told him. "We're not wiser. We just had to learn faster. When you're surrounded by species older and more powerful than you either innovate or you disappear. We chose innovation. And mercy," a Vardani officer added. "You could have destroyed both Krethian fleets." "We could have," Junho agreed. "But then we would have become the thing we were defending against. Power without ethics is just tyranny with a different flag. Humanity learned that lesson the hard way in our own history. We didn't want to repeat those mistakes." The young officers nodded thoughtfully. They were the future of their species, learning a new way of thinking about strength and security. Back in the observation deck, Jiwan and Hyejin were joined by Captain Minho Kang, who'd just finished his security rounds. "Everything's quiet," Minho reported. "No threats detected. The Krathian delegation seems genuinely interested in cooperation." "Strange world we live in now," Jiwan mused. 6 months ago they were invading us. Today they're proposing joint research projects. "Do you trust them?" Minho asked. "I trust that they understand the reality of the situation," G1 replied. "They can't conquer us. They can't ignore us, so they might as well work with us. It's pragmatic rather than altruistic, but I'll take it." Hyejin laughed softly. "That's very human thinking. We're good at finding practical solutions to impossible situations." "It's what we do best," Jiwan agreed. Far away, in human-controlled space, the 312 silence field generators stood silent and ready. Their presence had changed everything, transformed humanity from vulnerable newcomers to protected partners in galactic affairs. But the generators themselves rarely activated anymore. Most species had gotten the message. Attacking humanity was pointless. Instead, species came to humanity seeking alliance, trade, knowledge, and friendship. The Terran Accords had grown from 12 founding members to 24 within 6 months. More were applying for membership. The coalition wasn't an empire. It didn't conquer or subjugate, but it was becoming the most influential political force in the region. And at the center of it all, humanity quietly guided, mediated, and demonstrated that power could be used to protect rather than dominate. That strength without ethics was just violence, but strength with wisdom could transform a galaxy. Ambassador Jiwan Park stood at the viewport, watching ships from dozens of species come and go from the Grand Conclave station. Each one represented a species choosing cooperation over conflict, alliance over isolation. She pulled out the old newspaper she'd shown Empress Velrith 6 months ago. The headline about the missing fleet seemed almost quaint now. That incident had been a turning point, but not in the way the Krethians expected. They'd tried to start a war of conquest and instead sparked a revolution of cooperation. "What are you thinking?" Hyejin asked. Jiwan smiled. "I'm thinking humanity did something nobody expected. We didn't try to be the strongest species or the most advanced. We just tried to be smart, ethical, and prepared. And somehow that was enough to change everything." She folded the newspaper and put it away. It had served its purpose. Now it was time to build the future, one alliance at a time. One friendship at a time. One choice to cooperate instead of conquer. In the end, humanity's greatest weapon wasn't the silence field at all. It was the simple idea that you could be powerful without being cruel, secure without being aggressive, and successful without making others fail. That idea, more than any technology, was what would reshape the galaxy, and it all started with a laugh in a newspaper.